The Exelaran Empire had always prided itself on being a peaceful, enlightened race. Their advanced technologies, despite being far more sophisticated than most other galactic civilizations, had never been used for conquest or domination. They had a rich culture of peace, knowledge, and coexistence with other species. But now, all of that was at risk of being wiped out. The mighty Zarkan Empire, a brutal and expansionist power, had set its sights on the Exelarans. Their armies, far more advanced and ruthless, had destroyed everything in their path. And now, the final blow was about to be dealt. The Zarkan fleet, a terrifying armada of ships designed for war, had encircled the Exelaran homeworld. The skies above their planet were filled with an array of warships, each one towering in size and bristling with advanced weaponry. Their eye-controlled machines were programmed to annihilate everything in their way. There was no escape. The Exelaran defenses, no matter how advanced, were no match for the overwhelming force the Zarkans had brought. On the bridge of the Exelaran flagship, Commander Lyra stood frozen, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the battle unfolding outside. The Exelaran fleet was being decimated. The last few ships fought valiantly, but they were too few, and the Zarkans were closing in fast. Lyra's heart sank as she realized there was no longer any hope for her people. The Zarkans were about to deliver the final blow to their world, and nothing could stop them. "Captain," Lyra said softly, her voice breaking. "It's over. We've lost. There's nothing left." Her captain, Bonner, a seasoned veteran who had seen countless battles, clenched his fists. He could feel the weight of the loss pressing down on him, but his duty was to his people, and he wasn't about to give up. "We fight until the end," he said, determination in his voice. "We hold them off for as long as we can. Maybe someone will hear our call for help." As the Zarkan ships fired their final barrage, the sky above Xilara suddenly began to ripple. A strange phenomenon, unlike anything they had ever seen, tore through the atmosphere. It was as though the very fabric of space itself was being torn apart. A pulsing energy began to emanate from the rift, and for a moment, Lyra thought it was just another attack. But then, something incredible happened. From the depths of hyperspace, a fleet of warships materialized, emerging from the rift with incredible speed. These ships were unlike any the Xelarans had ever seen. They were massive, their hulls scratched and aged, but their sheer size and power were undeniable. It was as though they had been dormant for centuries, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The Xelarans stared in disbelief as the ships emerged from the void. Lyra's eyes widened as she recognized the unmistakable insignia emblazoned on the side of the leading ship. It was human. The fleet belonged to Earth. Who are they?" she whispered in awe, the sound barely escaping her lips. Her communication officer quickly interfaced with the fleet's signal. "It's Earth," the officer reported, astonished. They've sent their ancient fleet to our aid." The Zarkans, momentarily caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human ships, hesitated. But the silence was short-lived. The humans were not just here to observe. They were here to fight. The human fleet, though outdated compared to the Zarkan armada, possessed something far more dangerous: unpredictability. The first human ship to engage was a massive battlecruiser, its hull scarred from decades of battle. It fired a barrage of laser beams, hitting a Zarkan destroyer head-on. The explosion was catastrophic, and the Zarkan ship was torn apart in a single strike. The Zarkans reacted quickly, but they were not prepared for the humans' unconventional tactics. From Lyra's perspective, it was nothing short of miraculous. The human fleet's ships appeared ancient, some even looking like relics of an older time, but their power was undeniable. They were not just technologically impressive, they were relentless. Each human ship moved with purpose, using cloaking technology to disappear in and out of view, and launching surprise attacks that crippled the Zarkan forces. Their fleet, though smaller, had an edge that the Zarkans didn't expect. Lyra's mind raced as she watched the battle unfold. How could humans have such power? Their fleet was ancient, and yet they were holding their ground against the Zarkan Empire. She had to know more. The thought of Earth sending its fleet to fight for her people filled her with a mix of awe and gratitude. On the human flagship, Captain Marcus Steele watched as his ships engaged the enemy with precision and determination. His fleet, though outdated by galactic standards, was a formidable force. These ships had been built in the fires of war, designed for one purpose: to fight, survive, and win. And they would not go down without a fight. The first wave of Zarkan ships was soon forced to retreat, their formation scattered and confused by the relentless attacks from the human fleet. But this was just the beginning. The Zarkans would regroup, and the true battle was yet to come. Lyra could hardly believe what was happening. The humans, with their outdated technology, were turning the tide of the war. It was as if the entire galaxy had underestimated Earth. No one expected humans to possess such power, let alone send an entire fleet to defend another race. But here they were, fighting for the Accelerans, as if their own survival depended on it. As the battle raged on, Lyra began to feel something she hadn't in a long time: hope. For the first time since the Zarkans attacked, there was a chance that her people might survive this. The humans had proven that they were not only capable of defending themselves, but of standing up against the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and they were doing it for her people. The Aceleran fleet, though severely damaged, was reinvigorated. With the human fleet now in the fight, they stood a chance. The Zarkan forces, now facing a dual front of human and Celeran resistance, began to falter. The once mighty empire that had been on the verge of total domination was starting to crumble, and it was all thanks to the arrival of the humans, who had come to their aid when no one else would. In that moment, Commander Lyra realized that this was more than just a battle for survival. It was a battle for the future of the galaxy. The humans had shown her and her people that they would not be forgotten, no matter how outmatched they were. And for that, the Tellarans would be forever grateful. The fight for survival was far from over, but the arrival of the humans had changed everything. Now, the Zarkan Empire would learn a harsh lesson. Never underestimate the power of humanity, for when the galaxy turns its back on Earth, humanity will rise. The Aceleran Empire was fighting for survival, but even with the arrival of the human fleet, there was still a sense of uncertainty in the air. The Zarkan forces, though disoriented by the unexpected intrusion, were regrouping quickly, preparing for their counterattack. Lyra, standing at the heart of the battle, felt the weight of her people's fate pressing down on her shoulders. She had spent years watching her homeworld being ravaged by a superior enemy, and now, with humanity's ancient fleet at their side, she could finally see a glimmer of hope. But it was still uncertain if they could defeat the Zarkans. What puzzled her the most, however, was the fleet's unexpected nature. The human ships were old, built long before the galaxy had seen the rise of the Zarkan Empire. Their hulls were scared, their designs outdated, yet they moved with an unpredictable precision that was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Their tactics were unlike anything that Celarans had seen before, a combination of stealth, surprise, and brute strength. The humans had turned the tide of battle in the Celarans' favor, but Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more to these human ships than met the eye. As the battle raged on, Lyra and her crew began to observe the human tactics with growing curiosity. Their ships, despite their old age, possessed incredible cloaking technology that allowed them to disappear from the view of even the most advanced sensors. They would move silently in and out of enemy formation, striking the Zarkan fleet with surgical precision. Their weapons, seemingly designed for battles long forgotten, unleashed devastating electromagnetic pulses, frying the systems of the Zarkan warships in a single shot. It was as if the humans had unlocked a forgotten chapter in the history of war. The Xylarans, who had relied on their own advanced technology for centuries, were now witnessing the effectiveness of humanity's long-lost arsenal. Lyra couldn't help but be fascinated. She had always known of Earth as a planet on the edge of the galaxy, a distant world that few other races truly understood. It had no real galactic power, no vast empire to rival others in the galaxy. But as the battle continued, she began to see that there was something much deeper to Earth's history than she had ever imagined. "How is this possible?" she whispered, staring at the human ships as they reappeared from the cloaking shadows, launching another successful strike on the Zarin fleet. Her communication officer, who had been working furiously to intercept transmissions from the humans, finally spoke up. "Commander Lyra, I've been able to gather some information. It seems that Earth's fleet is not just ancient. It's part of a forgotten chapter in human history. Their ships were built during a time when Earth was on the brink of destruction." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. The humans were known for their resilience, their ability to survive against the odds. But to think they had once been on the brink of extinction, she couldn't fathom it. "Earth, on the brink of extinction?" Lyra asked, unable to hide her shock. "Tell me more." The officer nodded, continuing, "During Earth's ancient wars, they were involved in conflicts that nearly wiped them out. Their technology was rudimentary, their planet under constant threat from outside forces. But against all odds, humanity managed to survive. They invented new technologies, some of them far ahead of their time, like their cloaking devices, electromagnetic weapons, and their stealth tactics. These ships you see now were once the last line of defense for a dying species." Lyra's mind raced as she processed the information. She had always seen Earth as a small, unassuming planet, one that didn't stand out in the galaxy. But now she saw Earth in a new light. The humans had survived apocalyptic wars, built fleets to defend themselves, and emerged from the ashes stronger than ever. The ships that now fought beside the Xilurans were the product of a race that had been on the edge of extinction and had clawed its way back to survival. It was a story of resilience, of endurance, and of a people who would never give up. As the Zarin fleet regrouped, Lyra began to understand something deeper. The humans weren't here just to help them. They were here because they saw something in the Xilurans that reminded them of their own past. The humans had once been pushed to the brink, just as the Xilurans now were. They had fought for their survival, just as the Xilurans were fighting now. And this time, the humans were willing to fight beside them. The human fleet launched another surprise attack, this time with even greater intensity. The cloaking devices activated, and the human ships vanished from sight, leaving the Zarkans unaware of their presence. In the chaos of the attack, Lyra watched in awe as the Zarin warships began to falter. The humans' EMP weapons struck with deadly accuracy, rendering entire squadrons of Zarin ships useless in an instant. The power of the Zarin fleet was being drained, ship by ship, until they were reduced to a shell of their former strength. Lyra could see the Zarkans scrambling, their ships trying to regroup, but it was too late. The humans were relentless. They moved like shadows, attacking with swift precision, disorienting the Zarkans with their unorthodox tactics. The Xiluran fleet, bolstered by the human forces, began to take the upper hand. The Zarkans were no longer the invincible empire they once were. The humans had made sure of that. As the battle intensified, Lyra couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude toward the humans. She had heard stories of humanity's resilience, but now she saw it for herself. The humans had fought against overwhelming odds, and they were doing it again for the Xilurans. They had not only come to their aid, but had shown them a new way to fight. The Xilurans had always relied on their advanced technology and their strategic mind, but now they had learned something crucial from the humans. Sometimes, unpredictability and sheer determination could be just as powerful as superior technology. But as Lyra stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the battle unfold, she felt something else. Something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. For the first time since the Zarkans had attacked, she believed they might win. She believed they could defeat the empire that had terrorized them for so long. The humans had rekindled that spark of hope within her, and she wasn't about to let it go out. On the human flagship, Captain Marcus Steele stood stoically as his ships launched their next wave of attacks. His face was hard, his eyes cold with the focus of a soldier who had seen too many battles. But beneath the surface, he knew what this meant. Earth wasn't just fighting to protect the Accelerans. They were fighting for their own survival, for the future of the galaxy. The human fleet, though old and scarred, was fighting with a ferocity that no one could have anticipated. They had seen the horrors of war, the cost of survival, and they would stop at nothing to ensure that no one else would have to suffer the same fate. They had a deep-seated understanding of what it meant to survive, to fight for the future. And now, they were showing the Zarkans just what humanity was capable of. As the battle raged on, the Zarkan fleet began to break apart. They had underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. The Accelerans, with their morale bolstered by the humans' bravery, fought harder than ever before. They could see the light at the end of the tunnel. The Zarkans might be powerful, but they were no match for the combined strength of the Acceleran and human forces. And in that moment, Lyra knew that they would not only survive, they would win. And that victory would be a testament to the resilience of both their species. For the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to believe that they could defeat the Zarkan Empire. The ancient secret of humanity, its ability to rise from the ashes, to fight even when the odds were impossible, had given her people the strength to keep fighting. And now, together, they would make their stand. The battle for survival had reached a new intensity, with every ship in the human fleet working in unison, using tactics that caught the Zarkan Empire completely off guard. As the Acceleran and human forces continued to strike at the heart of the Zarkan Armada, chaos erupted in the vastness of space. Explosions rippled through the galaxy, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. The human warships, though ancient and outdated, darted in and out of the enemy lines with a speed and unpredictability that the Zarkans struggled to counter. These old ships were a reminder of humanity's past, of a time when Earth had been on the brink of annihilation. Yet here they were, defying all odds, facing down one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. The Zarkan fleets, guided by advanced eye-controlled systems, were designed to be efficient, calculating, and precise. However, they were not prepared for the humans' guerrilla-style tactics. Humanity's warships moved in unpredictable patterns, cloaking and reappearing in strategic positions to launch surprise attacks. The Zarkans, with their reliance on AI, were unable to anticipate these erratic movements, which made it nearly impossible for them to lock onto their targets. Human ships would vanish from their sensors, only to reappear moments later, striking from unexpected angles with devastating EMP blasts and missile barrages. Lyra watched the unfolding battle with a sense of disbelief. She had been a soldier for most of her life, and she had never witnessed anything like this. The Zarkans were technologically advanced, their AI fleets operating with cold precision. Yet, against all expectations, the humans were making them look foolish. Every time a Zarkan ship tried to fire its weapons, a human ship would vanish from view, only to reappear in another location, its guns already trained on their target. The Zarkans, no matter how advanced their technology, could not match the sheer unpredictability of the human attacks. The Acceleran fleet, emboldened by the human success, joined the fray with renewed determination. They had always fought with a sense of honor and precision, relying on their superior technology to defeat their enemies. But now, they found themselves learning from the humans. The Acceleran ships, once focused on their own tactics and strategy, began to incorporate some of the human methods. They cloaked their ships when needed, and attacked with a ferocity that mirrored the humans' raw energy. Despite their technological inferiority, the humans fought with everything they had. The Zarkans had been trained to expect a certain type of warfare, one of order, calculation, and technology. But the humans threw all of that aside, choosing to fight with pure, unrelenting spirit. They adapted to the situation, hacking into the Zarkan AI systems when they could, exploiting weaknesses, and using their smaller, more agile ships to avoid direct confrontation. The larger Zarkan warships were formidable, but they were slow and cumbersome, Unable to react quickly enough to counter the humans' guerrilla tactics, Captain Marcus Steele, aboard the human flagship, barked orders with a calm precision that came from years of experience. His fleet was the underdog, outnumbered and outgunned, but they had something the Zarkans didn't: raw, unyielding determination. Marcus knew this battle would be their last stand, and he couldn't afford to hold anything back. Every shot fired, every maneuver made, had to be perfect. His crew, battle-hardened and loyal, followed his lead without question. They had fought through wars on Earth's surface, survived against impossible odds, and now they were here, fighting for something far greater than themselves. The human fleet's superior knowledge of their own ships was an advantage. The Zarkans relied on their AI systems to handle most of the tactical decisions, but the humans had learned how to exploit every flaw in the system. They hacked into Zarkan communication lines, sending false signals to confuse their enemies. They disabled Zarkan weapons with well-placed EMP blasts, and then moved in to deliver the finishing blow. Each attack was calculated, yet unpredictable. The Zarkans, despite their advanced technology, found themselves struggling to keep up with the humans' raw ingenuity and adaptability. As the battle raged on, the Zarkan fleet began to buckle under the pressure. Their once impenetrable formation had been shattered, their ships scattered and vulnerable. The humans were relentless, pushing forward with wave after wave of surprise attacks. But just when it seemed like victory was within reach, the Zarkan commanders revealed their trump card. A massive Zarkan warship, larger than anything the humans had encountered, appeared on the battlefield. This ship was not like the others. It was a superweapon, capable of destroying entire planets with a single shot. The Zarkans had kept this weapon hidden, waiting for the perfect moment to deploy it. And now it was clear. This was the moment they had been waiting for. The weapon, known as the Oblivion Cannon, was a massive, towering structure on the Zarkan flagship. It had been designed to end wars with a single blow, obliterating entire civilizations with its sheer destructive power. The human fleet, though strong and unpredictable, was no match for the devastation this weapon could unleash. The Oblivion Cannon's first shot sent a shockwave through space, and the human ships felt the tremor deep in their hulls. The beam, a blinding flash of energy, streaked across the galaxy, targeting the heart of the human fleet. Captain Steele's voice came over the comms, sharp and clear. "All ships, evasive maneuvers. We need to buy time." His command was immediate, but even as he gave the order, Steele knew that they could not avoid the weapon forever. The Oblivion Cannon was too powerful, and the human ships, though fast and agile, were simply too small to withstand such an attack. As the superweapon charged up for its next shot, the Zarkans could see their advantage. With the Oblivion Cannon, they could annihilate the humans in one fell swoop. But they underestimated the human spirit once again. The humans had no intention of giving up, even in the face of such overwhelming power. The battle was far from over. The Zarkans had unleashed their deadliest weapon, but the humans had shown time and time again that they would not back down. The Zarkans were technologically advanced, but they lacked what the humans had: an unwavering will to survive. With every blast of the Oblivion Cannon, the humans adapted, finding new ways to fight, new ways to outsmart their technologically superior enemies. In the midst of the chaos, Lyra stood on the bridge of the Celeran flagship, watching the scene unfold. The humans had brought new hope to her people, but now they were facing their greatest challenge yet. The Zarkan superweapon had the power to turn the tide of the war in an instant. It was a race against time. Would humanity's underdog fleet be able to overcome the seemingly unbeatable odds? Would they survive against a force capable of wiping out entire worlds? As the Zarkan superweapon prepared for another devastating shot, Lyra clenched her fists, knowing that their survival now depended on the humans' ability to outmaneuver the impossible. The battle was far from over, and the stakes had never been higher. The clash of these titans was only just beginning. As the Zarkan superweapon charged up for another devastating shot, the human fleet found itself on the verge of collapse. The Oblivion Cannon had already unleashed its power once, and the damage it caused had taken its toll on the fleet. The humans had no more time to waste. Victory seemed almost impossible, but Captain Marcus Steele knew that they had to do whatever it took to stand a chance. Captain Steele, standing on the bridge of his flagship, stared out at the chaos unfolding in space. His face was grim, his mind racing as he analyzed their dwindling options. Their forces were scattered, their ships battered, and the Zarkans were only a step away from crushing them completely. Steele knew that if they didn't act fast, the humans would be wiped out in an instant. Yet he also understood that their survival depended on one final dangerous move, one that could cost them everything. "Prepare for the final push," Captain Steele said, his voice cold but resolute. "We need to board the Zarkan flagship and disable their superweapon from the inside." The plan was risky, almost suicidal, but Steele knew it was their only hope. The Zarkan's superweapon, the Oblivion Cannon, had the power to destroy entire planets, and if they didn't act now, humanity's last stand would be over. Steele's orders were clear. A small group of elite soldiers would board the Zarkan flagship, infiltrate its inner chambers, and disable the weapon, no matter the cost. The soldiers chosen for this mission were the best humanity had to offer. They were battle-hardened veterans, their resolve as unbreakable as steel. Each one had faced death before, but none of them could have known how costly this mission would be. They boarded their assault shuttles, preparing for the most dangerous mission of their lives. Lyra, the Celeran commander, watched from her flagship, feeling a deep sense of dread. She had been inspired by the humans' bravery, but she now realized that their willingness to fight for her people was far more than just a show of strength. These humans were willing to lay down their lives for a race they barely knew, a race that had once been on the brink of extinction. The emotional weight of that thought struck her like a physical blow. The human soldiers infiltrated the Zarkan flagship, a massive vessel that loomed over the battlefield. As they moved through the corridors of the enemy ship, they encountered fierce resistance. The Zarkans were not going to let them reach the superweapon without a fight. Gunfire echoed in the halls as the human soldiers pushed forward, their mission clear: disable the Oblivion Cannon and give humanity the chance to strike back. The soldiers fought with everything they had. Their movements were precise, coordinated, as they fought their way deeper into the heart of the Zarkan ship. But for every soldier who advanced, another fell. The Zarkans, their eye-driven defenses, were relentless, sending wave after wave of soldiers and automated drones to stop them. Despite their skill and determination, the human soldiers were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, the soldiers fell. Bonner, a tall, muscular soldier with a quiet strength, fought his way through enemy lines, leading the charge. He was determined to make it to the Oblivion Cannon, to ensure that his comrades' sacrifices were not in vain. But as he rounded a corner, a Zarkan drone appeared from the shadows, and a shot rang out. Bonner collapsed to the floor, a look of determination still etched on his face. His comrades carried on, but his loss was a heavy blow. Bonner's sacrifice gave them the chance they needed to keep pushing forward. Lyra watched helplessly as the human soldiers fought their way through the Zarkan ship, their numbers dwindling with every step. The Celeran fleet, inspired by the humans' bravery, continued to press the Zarkans with all their might. But Lyra knew that the true battle was happening within the heart of the Zarkan ship. The mission was far from over, and with every passing moment, the humans paid a higher price. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the remaining human soldiers reached the heart of the ship. The Oblivion Cannon loomed before them, a massive structure of metal and energy, capable of wiping out entire planets. The human soldiers planted explosives around the core of the weapon, determined to destroy it no matter the cost. But as they prepared to detonate the charges, the Zarkans launched a final, desperate counterattack. Explosions rocked the halls of the Zarkan ship as the remaining soldiers fought off the oncoming waves of Zarkan soldiers. They held their ground, refusing to back down. One soldier, barely conscious from the wounds he had sustained, managed to trigger the explosives. The Oblivion cannon exploded in a brilliant flash of light, sending shockwaves through the Zarkan fleet. The weapon was destroyed, but the cost was devastating. Lyra's heart sank as she watched the explosion from her ship. The human fleet, greatly diminished by the battle, fought on with sheer determination, but the emotional cost of the fight was undeniable. She had watched as the humans gave everything for a cause they barely understood. She had witnessed the bravery of soldiers who knew they were unlikely to survive but fought anyway. And now she felt the weight of their sacrifice in her heart. Captain Steele's voice crackled through the comms, strained but resolute. "The weapon is disabled, but we've lost too many. We won't be able to hold out much longer." Lyra wiped away the tears that had formed in her eyes, the reality of the human sacrifice hitting her harder than anything she had ever experienced. The human soldiers had given their lives not just for their own survival, but for the survival of an entire race they barely knew. It was a gift beyond measure, and yet it had come at an unimaginable cost. The battle wasn't over yet, but the victory was bittersweet. Humanity had won a crucial battle, but the emotional scars of the fight would linger long after the guns fell silent. The Zarkans had been defeated, but at what cost? And how would the humans cope with the heavy price of their victory? The battle for survival had changed everything for Lyra. She had witnessed the heart of humanity, their courage, their sacrifice, and their willingness to fight for the sake of others. It was a lesson she would carry with her forever. But for now, there was only the weight of the moment. The humans had done the impossible, but their victory had come with a heavy toll. And as Lyra watched the remnants of the human fleet make their way home, she knew that the true price of bravery was a lesson she would never forget. Humanity had sacrificed everything to defeat the Zarkan Empire, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy what it meant to truly fight for survival. The battle was reaching its climax. The human fleet, battered and broken, had pushed itself to the limits. They had faced an enemy far more powerful, far more advanced, and yet they hadn't given up. Their ships, though older and outclassed by the technologically superior Zarkan armada, still flew through space with a defiant roar. The odds were stacked against them, but humanity had something the Zarkans didn't: the will to fight for survival, for their people, and for the future. The battlefield around them was a storm of lasers, explosions, and shockwaves. The Zarkan armada filled the sky with their advanced warships and AI-controlled drones, their powerful weapons cutting through the void with precision. Their flagship, the Titanus, a massive behemoth of metal and technology, loomed like a black monolith, commanding the fleet and firing devastating blows that shattered human ships with ease. But despite the chaos, the remaining human fleet, though diminished, wasn't backing down. Captain Marcus Steele, standing on the bridge of his flagship, could feel the weight of the moment. The last of humanity's ships were in the fight of their lives, and the Zarkans were relentless. The human fleet had been through hell and back, losing many of its finest soldiers, but there was no turning back now. This was it, the final showdown. Brace for impact. Steele's voice echoed through the comms as another volley of enemy fire tore into the human ships. The entire fleet was shaking, but their engines roared, keeping them in the fight. Humanity had nothing left to lose. The Acceleran fleet, still supporting the humans, had been battered as well. But their spirits were high, inspired by the bravery of their human allies. Lyra, the Acceleran commander, had witnessed the human soldiers' sacrifice firsthand. Their heroism had turned the tide of the battle so far, and now, in the final hours, they stood with humanity in a fight to the death. The Zarkans, once so sure of their victory, now faced an enemy they couldn't predict. The humans' tactics were unpredictable, unlike anything the Zarkan commanders had ever seen. Using cloaking technology, EMP weapons, and sheer audacity, the human ships darted in and out of combat, hitting the Zarkans when they least expected it. The Zarkan fleet, with its advanced AI and highly organized tactics, was caught off guard at every turn. Their warships, designed for overwhelming firepower and precision, struggled to deal with the chaos the humans unleash. At the center of the chaos, human warships were maneuvering at breakneck speeds, weaving through fire and debris. Their hulls were scared and battered, some ships barely holding together after the onslaught of the Zarkan weapons. But despite the damage, the humans refused to give up. The Zarkans had underestimated them. And now, in the final moments, humanity was proving that they were more than just a race of survivors. They were warriors. "Steel, we need to take down the Titanus," shouted Lieutenant Harris, one of the few remaining officers on Steel's bridge. "If we don't, we're all done for." Captain Steele looked at the massive Zarkan flagship, its imposing presence dominating the battlefield. It was the heart of the Zarkan armada, and without it, their forces would crumble. The Titanus was heavily armored, its shields nearly impenetrable, but Steele knew that if they could get close enough, if they could somehow get a few lucky shots, they might stand a chance. "Prepare to engage at point-blank range," Steele ordered, his voice steely with resolve. "All ships, target the Titanus. This is our only shot." The human fleet shifted its formation, breaking off into smaller, faster groups. The Zarkan ships tried to keep up, but the human warships' unpredictable maneuvers made them impossible to pin down. As the human fighters sped toward the flagship, explosions erupted in their wake, the shockwaves rattling their ships. But they didn't stop. They pushed forward, their engines roaring as they closed the gap. Meanwhile, the Zarkan flagship Titanus unleashed hell upon the human fleet. Its guns fired relentlessly, tearing through the ranks of the human ships. But the human fighters had learned to dodge and weave, using their ships' unique abilities to evade the majority of the incoming fire. They were moving too fast for the Zarkan weapons to track. In the midst of this chaos, Captain Steele's flagship, Fortitude, led the charge. The ship's hull was cracked and scorched from previous battles, but it was still fighting. Steele's voice rang out again, calm yet full of command. "All ships, focus fire on the Titanus's power core. We need to hit it hard, and we need to hit it now." The human ships launched their final assault, surging forward with all the power they had left. Plasma cannons fired, missiles streaked through the vacuum of space, and the sky above the Zarkan flagship erupted with fire. The Titanus shook under the barrage, its shields flickering under the sustained pressure. It was beginning to falter. But the Zarkans wouldn't give up without a fight. "All units, deploy defensive countermeasures," the Zarkan commander shouted, as automated drones surged toward the attacking human ships. They fired relentlessly, their weapons designed to shred even the toughest human armor. The human ships swerved and dived, dodging the incoming fire with reckless abandon. They were taking every risk they could, fighting with everything they had. Then, in a moment of pure chaos, the unthinkable happened. The Titanus, already severely damaged, attempted to retaliate by launching its most devastating weapon, the Oblivion Beam, capable of destroying entire fleets in one shot. The massive energy cannon charged up, its massive aperture glowing with an eerie blue light. It was ready to fire. "Captain, it's too late," Lieutenant Harris screamed. "We can't stop it." But Steele wasn't done yet. He knew that the only way to stop the Zarkans was to push forward, even if it meant risking everything. "Keep going," he barked. "Full speed ahead." With a final roar, the Fortitude and its remaining fleet poured every last ounce of energy into the attack. They were close, too close for the Zarkan flagship to stop them. As the Oblivion Beam fired from the Titanus, it sent a shockwave through the battlefield, but the humans had already launched their final, desperate assault. The Titanus took the brunt of the explosion. The force of the impact created a massive shockwave, tearing the flagship apart in a fiery explosion. For a moment, there was silence. The battlefield was a wasteland of burning wreckage and shattered ships. The Zarkan fleet was in disarray. Their flagship, their symbol of power, was gone. The remaining Zarkan ships tried to regroup, but the human fleet, though battered and torn, was still standing. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken down the Titanus, the heart of the Zarkan Empire. Victory wasn't just a dream anymore. Humanity had won. The Zarkans, for the first time in centuries, were on the retreat. The human fleet, though shattered, had secured the future of the galaxy. As the last Zarkan ships flooded into the void, Captain Steele stood tall, his face a mixture of relief and grief. The cost had been high. Many had fallen. But they had won. Humanity had won. The human fleet, though severely damaged, stood firm in the aftermath of the battle. The remaining ships limped through the void, their hulls scarred from the brutal combat, but they were still flying. They had won. Against all odds, they had fought and won. Their bravery had not only saved Earth, but had also ensured the survival of the Acceleran people. It was a victory born of desperation, courage, and unity. On the battlefield, the sight of wreckage and destruction was overwhelming. The remains of the Zarkan fleet drifted in space, their once imposing warships now nothing more than twisted metal and debris. The human ships, though battered, had survived, and as they regrouped, a sense of relief washed over the crew. But there was no time for celebration yet. The victory was hard-earned, and the emotional toll was deep. For Captain Marcus Steele, the moment of victory was bittersweet. He had led his people to triumph, but the price of that triumph had been the loss of many brave souls. The faces of the fallen soldiers haunted him, and the weight of their sacrifice pressed heavily on his heart. The Acceleran fleet, though also damaged, had played a crucial role in the fight. Lyra, the Acceleran commander, stood on the bridge of her ship, staring at the battlefield with a mixture of awe and sorrow. She had never imagined that the humans would fight so fiercely, so relentlessly, for a cause that was not their own. They had sacrificed everything to save her people, and the weight of that sacrifice was not lost on her. Lyra had come to respect humanity's courage, but now, in the quiet aftermath of the battle, she could not hold back her tears. The battlefield before her was a testament to the cost of victory. The bodies of the fallen, both human and Acceleran, scattered among the wreckage. Her people had been saved, but at what cost? As Lyra's eyes swept across the remnants of the battle, she realized that humanity had given everything for this victory. The humans had fought not for themselves, but for others. They had fought for the Accelerans, for their future, and for the survival of all who called the galaxy home. It was a humbling thought. Lyra had once seen humans as just another species in the galaxy, but now she saw them as something far more. They were warriors, protectors, and allies. They were beings willing to lay down their lives for those they barely knew. The Acceleran people had already begun to celebrate. There was joy in their ranks, relief that they were no longer under the threat of the Zarkan Empire. But for Lyra, the victory felt hollow. She could not bring herself to celebrate when so many had paid the ultimate price. The sacrifices made by the humans weighed heavily on her, and her heart ached for all those who had fallen. She had fought alongside them. But in that moment, she understood the true cost of the war. As she stood there, lost in her thoughts, Lyra's communicator beeped, signaling an incoming transmission. She glanced at the screen, where Captain Steele's face appeared, his expression somber but resolute. "Lyra," he said, his voice carrying the weight of the moment, "I know this victory doesn't feel like much right now, but we've won. We've done it together." Lyra wiped away her tears and nodded. "Yes, Captain. We've won, but at such a cost." "I know," Steele replied, his voice full of understanding. "But we've secured a future for our people. For yours too. And that's something worth celebrating." Lyra looked out at the battlefield once more, taking in the remnants of the fight. "You're right," she said quietly. "We've won. And for that, we can be grateful." The connection ended, and Lyra sat in silence for a moment. The pain of loss was still fresh, but Steele's words echoed in her mind. They had won. And with that victory came the promise of a new future. The humans had shown the Accelerans what it meant to fight for survival, and in return, The Celeran people would never forget the debt they owed. As the hours passed, the human and Celeran fleets began to regroup. The Celerans, in a show of gratitude, sent out messages of thanks to the human forces. The alliance between Earth and the Celerans had been solidified through blood, sacrifice, and shared determination. The bonds that had been forged in the fires of war were unbreakable. The two species had fought side by side, and now they would build a future together. Lyra stepped down from her command post and made her way to the central chamber of her ship. There, she found her people waiting, eager to hear her words. She stood before them, her heart heavy, but filled with hope. "The Zarkan Empire has been defeated," she began, her voice strong but filled with emotion. "We are no longer under their threat. We owe this victory to the humans. Without their bravery, their sacrifice, we would not be here today. We will never forget what they have done for us." The crowd of Celarans remained silent, listening intently. Lyra continued, her words filled with gratitude and resolve. "We have fought side by side with the humans, and together we have secured our future. This alliance is not just a political agreement. It is a bond forged in the fires of battle. And I promise you, we will honor that bond. We will stand together, no matter what threats may come in the future." The Celarans cheered, their voices echoing through the chamber. Lyra could see the hope in their eyes, the belief that their future was secure. The humans had not only saved their people, but they had also shown them the power of unity. Together, the Celarans and humans would face whatever the galaxy had in store for them. The celebration continued, but as the Celarans and humans shared in their victory, Lyra could not shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and new challenges would come. But now, with their alliance in place, they would face those challenges together. The final scene of the war saw the first peaceful meeting between the Earth leadership and the Celeran leaders. Representatives from both species stood together, their hands extended in friendship. It was a moment of hope, of renewal. The leaders spoke of cooperation, of building a future where both species could thrive together. There were still many obstacles to overcome, but the spirit of unity that had been forged in the heat of battle would be the foundation for the new era that was beginning. As the meeting drew to a close, Lyra and Captain Steele stood side by side, watching the exchange between the two species. "We've done it," Steele said, his voice quiet but full of satisfaction. "Yes," Lyra replied, her gaze focused on the leaders of both species. "We've done it together." The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, there was hope. Humanity and the Celarans had come together, and with that unity came the promise of peace, of cooperation, and of a new beginning for both species. In the days that followed, as the two species worked together to rebuild and fortify their new alliance, the galaxy began to change. The shadow of the Zarkan Empire was no more, and in its place, a new hope had been born. A hope that the galaxy could be a place of peace, not war, of unity, not division. Humanity had shown the galaxy that even in the darkest of times, when all seemed lost, there was always hope. And as the first rays of a new dawn rose over the horizon, both humans and Celarans knew that together they could face whatever the future held.